Hello, everyone. Hi. I just wanted to let you guys know that this entire event is designed so that anybody who wants to be here can be here. So if for any reason you don't feel safe or you don't feel welcome or something weird happens or somebody says something weird, just find somebody in a blue shirt. They can help you out. If you can't find somebody in a blue shirt, they can help you out at the front desk. So our next speaker has worked on a couple apps you might have heard of. Delicious Library, Tap Tap Revenge, Obama 08, the iPhone App Store. He is the world's toughest programmer, and he is the mayor of Amsterdam, Mike Lee.
Thank you, everybody. It's very, very kind. Is the mic on? That's a good question. They're good? Or, yeah? Okay. All right. I don't know. I can only keep track of one thing at a time. Hey, there we go. That sounds good. Okay. Whew. Loud, nice. All right. This one's hard. You got to understand. I've never given a talk like this before, and I'm really nervous about it. But I feel like it's really important, so bear with me. This one's called Being Better. And if you're looking for any kind of trigger warning, this is it. This is a talk about good and evil, and things are going to get ugly, and they may get emotional for you, and if you're not prepared for that, it could be unpleasant. This talk is being recorded. I think we can assume all things are being recorded. And if you leave now, you can still experience this talk in your own time and on your own terms. To paraphrase some aviation wisdom, if you're afraid that you might have something happen to you that you don't want to happen to you, it's much better for you to leave now and wish you had stayed than to be stuck in here and wishing that you had left. So to drive the point home and to give people a fair chance to exit the building, I'm going to read you all some of my poetry. That's my poetry face. You'll have to forgive me, for I tend to mix how we talk to machines, neuroscience, physics, the meta, linguistics, existential dread, religion, and science all up in my head. I can't do this whole presentation in rhyme, but with meter and rhythm and meaning I've hidden, it might be like poetry some of the time. The first two questions are, who are you and why are you here? Our ego and our dharma for every object and every language, even in the obsolete languages like Objective-C, where we called the answers to these questions self and CMD. Each of us is born into our scope and makes our contributions to the overall state of things before we pop off the stack of this mortal coil to sleep and never wake up, restoring nature's balance like a virtual particle that once woke up without ever having gone to sleep. This is a talk about being better. And if there's anything that defines what it is to be Apple people, it is this: to be much better. We don't just love Apple for superior technology, but for superior philosophy. We love that we don't consider the bloody ROI when making our devices accessible to the blind. And if that makes us different, then that's sad, but so be it, because we are willing to be different to be much better. Not better than each other, not better than those other people. We just need to be better than ourselves. I call this one the Queen's Head Sutra. When I was traveling the world, I went to a geological park in Taiwan. This is a place where you go to look at rocks that look like other things. They love nature in Taiwan. They love the kind of accidental poetry you get when our human minds look at the odd sort of semi-randomness of nature. And the star attraction is called Queen's Head. It's a boulder, and it looks like any other boulder from almost any angle. But if you stand in just the right spot, it looks just like the bust of Nefertiti. And when I think about this rock, I imagine several people standing around angry, yelling at each other about what this rock looks like, and especially the one person who insists on this different point of view that this rock somehow looks like Nefertiti. And how frustrating it must be to be the one person who sees that truth that nobody else can see. only they would stop yelling at each other and just see the rock as the others see the rock, they would see the whole truth and their minds would expand. But we are all like that. When a trans person or a person of color or just anyone who experiences life from a different angle or a different culture sees something that we don't. Why do we do that? And what does that have to do with the murderer Elliot Rodger and the poet Maya Angelou? This one's called Amsterdam, Part 1, City by the Bay. Amsterdam is where I live now, in a lovely house on a lovely canal. So beautiful, they say, it was painted by Monet. That's actually where I live. That's my actual street. And Amsterdam's just the kind of city where you live in a place like that, where it's like an impressionist painting all the time, and where people go to the store to get fresh food every day. So every day I go to the store, which is just, it's just a few hundred meters away. And I try to think in meters because everybody thinks in meters. I walk past the statue of Baruch Spinoza, who realized that God did not create the universe, but that God is the universe. I walk past the house where Rembrandt van Rijn, who's like the Will Shipley of painters, lived and worked and partied and suffered. And I walk past the street that's still named for the Jews who used to live there. And I think of Anne Frank, whose house we visit on occasion. There used to be this out of the closet there, and it would always remind me of San Francisco and how Amsterdam is like San Francisco at its most romantic, clean, and where everyone's happy. And, people complain, but they don't worry about, paying for medical care or school for their kids. And so that now with that out of the closet's gone, it closed for some reason, and I hope it's for the same reason that a lot of the gay service organizations in the Netherlands have closed, because the war is over, and we won. And Pride is a national holiday. And there are so many gay politicians in the Netherlands that you can almost forget that there's places in the world where gay people can't get married, like Russia and California. It's a lot to think about when you're just walking to the store. But I always end up with 2 bags of groceries because some things are heavy and some things are fragile. And I have 2 bags and I have 2 arms, and because I'm a primate, I have fine motor skills and only one half of my brain, so one arm is strong and the other arm is less strong. And the obvious thing to do is to carry the heavy bag with the strong arm and the light bag with the weak arm. Like, that's optimal. That seems normal. It seems like the natural order of things. But that's all wrong, because I don't use the strong arm because it's strong. The strong arm is strong because I use it more because it's easier for me. I should carry the heavy bag with the weak arm, because if I don't, then the disparity between my arms is just going to get worse, and there's no benefit to that. There's no benefit to having unbalanced arms. It's just a side effect of our asymmetrical brains. Because the brain has these 2 halves, right? And the stronger half, it's also the faster half, because it takes a very narrow view of things, and it sees the world in black and white, right or wrong, rules, and structure. It saves time by being incapable of admitting that it's wrong or even having a concept of being wrong, and the focus is so powerful, addictively powerful, but focus also makes you blind. Each half of the brain only controls the opposite half of the body, and if you damage or disable the other half of the brain, then that focusing half, it doesn't even know that the other half of the body is there. And because it can't be wrong, it won't accept that the body is there, and you'll just come up with the most outlandish stories to explain whose hand this is and why it's just hanging here. It's funny and it's horrifying at the same time. That's what you get when you Google funny and horrifying at the same time. I don't know why they both have facial hair. Anyway, the other half of the brain doesn't have this problem because it knows about the other half, because it takes a holistic view of things, and it knows all about being wrong because it always is trying to see things from multiple angles. The way that, like, Maya Angelou, she would mix the language from that left half of the brain, and then she would break through our defenses and use the music of the right half of the brain, and she would engage our whole minds with that poetry, and she'd somehow make us think of serious things. She'd somehow help us to see things from a different angle. And doing things right takes time, you know? It's like working out all the angles takes time, and we think that figuring things out quickly makes us smart, but it's considering all the angles that makes us smart. It's really understanding the problem that makes us smart, and that takes both halves of the brain, which takes patience, and it takes actual effort. It's like exercise. You have to make yourself do things the hard way, because doing things the easy way doesn't make you anything except for morally weak and intellectually lazy. I call this one shirt cockers, or the root of all evil. If you ever feel that there might be a subtle Burning Man influence to the way that I think about things, this is where that becomes proved. Proven? I don't know, whatever. When good people let themselves be lazy, they can do evil by mistake. An increasingly large number of women are driving drunk because the stereotypical drunk is a man. Sexism can kill you. Racism can also kill you. During World War I, tens of thousands of workers from colonial China were imported to Europe to work on the front. Hundreds of them arrived sick because they're crammed onto these trains with these respiratory infections, and the racist doctors just said, "You're lazy Chinamen, get back to work." And we know what happens when you go to work with the flu. And this flu, the so-called Spanish flu, killed 50 million people. Now we call this flu H1N1, and we know that it doesn't come from Spain, it comes from birds and China and racism. But we can't call those doctors evil because they weren't evil, they were doctors. Doctors are the best people in the world. They weren't evil, they were lazy. They were arrogant the way we all are, and they thought that they were the good guys the way that we all do, and they had this lack of empathy that let their prejudice and their intellectual laziness lead them to a bad decision. And because they were doctors, because they took responsibility for some part of the system that we're all a part of, their bad decision had serious consequences. 50 million consequences. 50 million people, most of whom were between the ages of 20 and 40. Because the brain is lazy and likes to pretend that other people are other. It's like the one thing we have in common is looking down on each other. Everywhere I go, everyone I meet, everyone looks down on someone. Even at Burning Man, where the whole idea is radical acceptance, we find people to hate. And we call them shirt cockers. Because these are the people who take the opportunity to dress any way they want, and they dress exactly like how you think they're going to dress, as shirt cockers. And they're called shirt cockers because sometimes they wear shirts. Because with radical acceptance, you get to be yourself. That means women who are sick of men treating their breasts like sexual objects can finally walk around topless like it ain't no thing, and men just have to deal with it. But it also means that we have to accept what everybody else is too, which leads inevitably to shirt cocking. And shirt cockers are really the one thing that makes Burning Man suck. Which means at the same time that shirt cockers are the main thing that makes Burning Man, at least for me. For you, it might be shirt cockers or it might be somebody else, but it's going to be somebody because everybody has some subset of the human population who are not like us and who are not a part of the future that we are building and who should not, if we're honest, continue to exist in our world. For Hitler, it was the Jews, and the gays, and the gypsies, and the poor, and anybody else he didn't see fit for the future he was building. And I know it's cheating to compare things to the human embodiment of evil because nobody is like that, but I want to read this to you anyway. In past ages, the law governing the survival of the fittest roughly weeded out the less desirable strains. then man's new sense of pity began to interfere with the ruthless workings of nature. As a result, we continue to keep alive and to breed the unfit. The only method compatible with our notions of civilization and the race is to prevent the breeding of the unfit by sterilization and the deliberate guidance of the mating instinct. Several European countries and a number of states of the American Union sterilize the criminal and the insane. This is not sufficient. The trend of opinion among eugenists is that we must make marriage more difficult. Certainly, no one who is not a desirable parent should be permitted to produce progeny. A century from now, it will no more occur to a normal person to mate with a person eugenically unfit than to marry a habitual criminal. Godwin's law clearly states that compare something to Hitler is to surrender the argument, but that wasn't Hitler, that was Tesla. That was Nikola Tesla who said those things. And I'm not saying that Tesla was evil, because we all know that Tesla was an amazing dude. But he also shared beliefs with Hitler. But then most smart people thought that it was a good idea to breed people like machines, to breed people like animals, and we forgot about that. We forgot that it wasn't just Hitler who believed those terrible things. We forgot because by blaming the dead loser for all the evil in the world, by defining one man as the human embodiment of evil, we define ourselves as not evil. And that sets us up to become evil. This one's called Amsterdam Part 2, the happiest place on earth. Because in Amsterdam, we remember the people who died because we weren't vigilant, and we promise each other that we'll never let it happen again. We protect our gays and our Jews, and we pride ourselves on our diversity, because when you start your company in the Netherlands as an American, your residency permit is automatic, and you get to live and work with people from 150 nationalities. People from all over the world come to Amsterdam, the crown jewel in a country of jewels, where every city is just as wonderful, but none are quite as welcoming and so famously liberal as Amsterdam, the capital of tolerance, the birthplace of capitalism. I left the United States when I lost my health insurance. Now I pay 100 euros a month for amazing health insurance. I see the doctors I want when I need them. There's never any kind of copay, even for prescription drugs, and I'm free to change my job status or my relationship status, and it doesn't affect my insurance status because why the hell would it? And people here say that's socialism, and you're paying for this with higher taxes and socialism. Because the focusing half is so quick to recognize how others are wrong, but incapable of seeing how you might be wrong. We don't even have socialized medicine in the Netherlands. Everyone just has private insurance like you have here, except that it's accessible to everyone and it's affordable to everyone and it's way, way cheaper for us and we actually get health care. No, we are not socialists, we are capitalists and you are doing capitalism wrong. Because racism is bad for business and sexism is bad for business and homophobia is bad for business and just making fun of people is bad for business. Empathy for other people, understanding what they need and providing for those needs, that is the very soul of business. The Dutch are not liberal because they're rich because they are liberal. Because their capital, Amsterdam, is so famous and so beautiful that millions of tourists spend their money. They flock there every year like people going to One Infinite Loop. It's insane. But even the Dutch are becoming lazy. This past tourist season, I got this in the mail. This is a neighborhood magazine that's funded partially by the government, and it featured a racist caricature of who I guess are supposed to be the Chinese tourists that have been coming a lot lately. And I say I guess because there was no actual article about it. Like, there was an article just bitching about tourists, and I'm sorry, that was misogynistic, complaining about tourists in general. But there was no article. It was just a freestanding piece of casual racism. And you know, we can be offended by this because it's easy to be offended and it's fun to be offended, but it's useless to be offended because apologies are also useless. I just look at this as stupid. It's a waste of time and money. The government wasted money to waste my time, to get my attention, to say something about these people. And what did they want to say? Who they are, what they like, how we can make money from them, maybe? No, they just want to point and laugh at stupid people who are so stupid that they would come to our country and try to spend their money. And it's not that we're so rich that we can afford to lose money. It's just that we're not racist. Like, you might be racist and see racism in what is clearly just an attempt to lighten the mood, but it's not racism because we're not racist. Like, how could we be racist? We have 150 nationalities in our capital city. We're so not racist that every December we dress our children in blackface to play Santa's slaves, and it's totally fine. I'm kidding. Our Santa doesn't have slaves. Your Santa has slaves. Your Santa has committed genocide against the entire Elvish race at the North Pole. Our Santa has helpers. And they're not black. Their faces are covered in chimney soot, and their big red lips, and their afro wigs, and the fact that they talk in a racist accent is it's just an amazing coincidence. Don't criticize our traditions. Black Pete has been around for as long as the Muslims have hated the Jews, and you are the ones who are racist. Focusing half is just it's incapable of being wrong. It'll just invent the most outlandish stories to explain that it's not wrong. It will even explain away half of your own body. I call this one, choose your weapon. Because, you know, it's the US and violence metaphors, right? When you look at the ocean and you see the waves, you know that the waves are not water, but pure energy moving through the water, using the water as the medium across which to travel and become manifest. Memes are the waves moving through our genes, using our meat sacks as the medium across which to travel and become manifest. Did you know that the Muslims and the Jews used to get along just fine? That's why there are so many Jews in the Middle East to begin with. Because when the Europeans were kicking them all out of Europe, the Muslims were like, hell yeah, come on, hang out. We're all Semitic peoples. I mean, Muslims and Jews have so much more in common in general than they do with the European colonialists who make their lives such hell. But eventually, the colonialists followed the Jews to the Middle East. One country in particular, Germany, which you might have heard of, took over the entire Middle East and Northern Africa in the 1930s. And I'm not pretending like Germany had a monopoly on anti-Semitism, but their government, the Nazis, they did use their anti-Jewish propaganda to divide the local population like you do. And when the war was over, that stuff just stayed there, like a wave reverberating through the culture until a couple of years later, Israel was founded, and then boom. It wasn't even that long ago, but it was before we were born, so we think it was forever. Like, it's like an optical illusion, but with time. And there's a name for it. It's called the shifting baseline problem. It's why when you see a large flock of birds, you think, wow, that's a large flock of birds. Whereas a person from 200 years ago would be like, where are all the birds? Because there used to be so many birds that their flocks would blacken out the sky for days. For days. And you could shoot a shotgun into the air and dead birds would fall like rain. And you wouldn't even make a dent in their numbers. It was insane. And there were so many birds, we never thought we could possibly kill them all. And then we did. In 100 years. And then we forgot about it. And now the skies are empty, and that's just normal. The shifting baseline problem, Douglas Adams described it like this. He said, anything that is in the world when you were born is normal and ordinary and is just a natural part of the way that the world works. Anything that's invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it, as we all know. And anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. I'm looking at you, new programming language. I'm like 38, and that's just not natural. We need to watch out for shifting baselines. And we especially need to watch out for people who create things and then make us accept them as normal. This guy's Cecil Rhodes. He took a common mineral that was not rare or valuable or even particularly durable, And he made the whole world believe that a diamond is forever. The very symbol of engagement. How else can 1 month's salary last forever? And I know a lot of you want to correct me, right? Because it's 2 months' salary, right? We all know it's 2 months' salary. Yeah, I'm not fooling anybody, because the focusing half, it's so fast to see how others are wrong, right? But that holistic half, like it just needs time to see how others might possibly be right. Because the really shitty thing is it actually was 1 month, and then once they proved that they could alter our culture like that, then they're like, we can get away with 2. And the fact that you all know that it's 2 months and that your brain is trying to fight me is just proof of how right they were. This stuff is so powerful we don't even know that it's happening, and that's the whole point. And if we know that it's happening, we still can't do anything about it. Like women who know about diamonds still want diamonds, very frequently. Not all women want diamonds, but knowing about them doesn't necessarily change their minds. This stuff is stronger than just your free will. Madison Avenue made up the whole idea of gender. And I know you think, oh, but chromosomes and breasts and children. But Klinefelters and mastectomies and fucking infertility. We're talking about real people here. And there are so many exceptions that I think we just kind of have to accept the fact that gender is nothing more than a statistical clustering of bad ideas. Did you know that for all time, pink was the manliest color and blue was for girls? But they're so good at manipulating us that just for fun and profit, they made boys wear blue and then reject pink as girly. We accept made-up rules as reality, and that's not even the worst thing that we do. The worst thing that we do is probably the fundamental attribution error and its related cognitive biases, where we cut ourselves slack, but we blame everybody else for their own problems, where we give ourselves too much credit, but everybody else feels lazy, which is totally natural because you suffer in real time, and everyone else's suffering is just a story that you heard. Sartre said that hell is other people, not because other people are idiots, but because we think other people are idiots. Do you understand? Hell is other people watching and being watched, judging and being judged, too concerned with the privilege of others, blind to how our own privilege victimizes others. We make this world hell by judging each other, by thinking that we are in a position to judge each other because we think that we're better than each other and better than other people. But surely we must be better than a teen mother or a stripper or a prostitute. And yet Maya Angelou was all of those things, and she was better than all of us. It is very, very dangerous to dehumanize anyone, even the lowest of the low, even the child molesters and the terrorists, because when you allow labels to become weaponized, you create vengeful tools to be used for evil by people who want to manipulate you into giving in to easy answers. If we can't empathize with someone like Elliot Rodger, if we don't see how anybody could empathize with a cold-blooded killer who murdered 6 people out of pure vengeance, if we allow ourselves to dehumanize Elliot Rodger, then we know what it feels like to be Elliot Rodger, to be self-justified, to make other, to dehumanize, and to seek vengeance. Vengeance is the way of evil. Human beings are not evil. Vengeance is evil. Vengeance is evil, and dehumanization is how vengeance happens. There is so much anger in this city. It's so dirty, and it smells like pee, and the people, the ruined people, and the people who are ruined by ignoring them, who consider this normal the way that when we lived here, we considered this normal. But there is nothing normal about a city where you step over a homeless person to buy $4 toast. Why don't you just give the person $4 and have them clean up the street? Do we think that the solution to our shitty public transit system, like literally deadly shitty public transit system, is for all the people with the power and the money to fix it to just Uber everywhere? We can look at these things as side effects of the money we're making and fix it, or we can ignore these things as not our responsibility and just let it suck for everyone until it explodes. Shifting baselines, fundamental attribution errors, other people's problems, so much evil. We came here 3 weeks early. In a day, I was depressed. In a week, we just got a car and we moved to the suburbs. Because there's plenty of room to just avoid all these angry people. Our own little castle with its private park and plenty of parking, or so we thought. Because it turns out that the neighbor is this horrible old woman, and she insists that we not park in front of her house because she wants to park her car there as if she owns the street in front of her house, which she does not. And it's like, lady, check your entitlement. This is a public street, and I have a right to park wherever I damn well please. And if that sounds harsh, you have to understand that she was really mean. Just the way she talks just makes you want to tell her off. And that's not even the worst part. Like, the worst part is that she doesn't even have a car. She's just some crazy old lady who doesn't want you to park in front of her house because of her imaginary car. So there's just this like prime spot just sitting empty the whole time. And I'm like, I have every right to park in front of your house and give you both middle fingers. But I don't do that because it's all fun and games until you're explaining it in front of a judge. And it's true that one of these days I may very well have to go down for what's right, but am I going to go down over this? A parking spot, an old woman and her asphalt garden? Or am I going to be kind to her and leave her be? Not because I have to, not because she deserves it, but because I want to be better than I am. To be nice to somebody who deserves it, that's easy. To be nice to someone who doesn't, that's grace. And grace is the way of good. And vengeance is the way of Elliot Rodger. Even without knowing the victims or their families, there's so much to be sad about, or mad about, or scared about. But the thing that always depresses me the most about these mass murders that seem to be endemic to this society is what they do to the survivors. Everyone taking sides, everyone screaming about feminism or gun control or mental health, or just everyone's blaming each other and attacking each other, and there's so much vengeance for the murderer and so much vengeance for each other. And the vengeance of Elliot Rodger should die with Elliot Rodger, but we make it live on in us. It would be nice if life were so easy that all we had to do was pick the right side and give it everything we've got. But being better is not about being on the right side. Being better is about, it's not about distancing yourself or how far you're willing to go. It's about refusing to pick a side. It's about working for the betterment of all and refusing to allow for the creation and deployment of weaponized labels. No matter how justified our cause, no matter how heartfelt our reasons, to pick sides is to allow for the creation of sides. And for the labeling of others, we add fuel to the engine that drives our every struggle. That's why I think feminism is important. I think anything that helps us see the world from another angle is important. But I don't consider myself a feminist. I don't consider myself a humanist. I serve the system, the sphere that we're all stuck on together, and spheres don't have sides. The atomic unit of good versus evil is when one person says something unkind about something, and we either distance ourselves from that thing, oh, I hate that too, those people, or we have empathy, or try to have empathy for that thing. The easiest and most stimulating option is always the first option. It's always adopting or even magnifying a growing group hatred for the same person, place, behavior, or idea. It's so fun to hate. It feels good the way war and winning and just being a superior badass in general feels good. And that's why it's so popular. And that's why there's so much evil in the world. It's much harder to make yourself the object of someone's animosity, to risk ridicule or exclusion because you're the Debbie Downer who ruins everyone's fun. Because it is no fun when you're trying to hate and people around you are like, oh, I don't know, I do that myself sometimes, or I went there and they're actually really nice people, or I don't know why that's happening to them, but that could be any of us. It really stops the old lynch mob right in its tracks. The fun way, the easy way, that's always going to win. The way that entropy is always going to win. And with entropy, we're not standing still, but on a moving sidewalk, moving in the wrong direction. if we do not put forth extra effort, if we do not invest in the pain of exercise, if we take the easy path and allow ourselves to be lazy, then we too will become what Elliot Rodger became. Not evil, but the medium through which evil travels and becomes manifest. This one's called One More Thing. Because there's really only one thing that's left to say. And that's what any of this has to do with technology or programming or code or anything. Like, why should we care? Like, why do we have to take responsibility for the world as we found it? We're not special. Like, just shut up and build something cool, am I right? But we are special. We are all such powerful individuals. We are all, everyone in this room, so rare, such a tiny percentage of the population, and we build the future. We build the future, and we're building it wrong because we think we're better than other people, because we forget that what we do is empathy as a service. Steve never said, shut up and build something cool. What Steve said was, everything was built by people. That isn't permission to do what we want, like the Lord granting dominion over the earth, or manifest destiny, or whatever we're calling it now, immunity from prosecution, don't be evil. Steve's words are an inspiration, but they're also a warning that every terrible thing was also built by people, all of whom thought that they were doing the right thing. Nothing happens that we don't make happen. Without scientists and engineers and artists, there is no science, there is no engineering, and there is no art. And there are therefore no iPhones and no internet, and there are no weaponized robots, and there is no panopticon. To build a better future, we can and must be better. Better at empathy, better at grace, better than the people we were when we woke up this morning.